No.
Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. So our synopsis was Janie was a free spirit who had been smothered her entire life by her grandmother. And her grandma wanted the best for her, so she married her off to Logan Felix, which was her first husband, and he was considerably older than her. And she then realized she wasn't really in love, and she wanted to be in love. So she left him for Jody Starks, the first man who showed interest in her. And he was a wealthier businessman who, showed interest in her. Jody, he made a name for himself, but he kept Janie in the house, and he kept her from reaching her full potential. Eventually, Jody passed away, and she left Janie a wiser person who knew what she wanted more so than when she was married to her first husband. She then fell in love with Teacake. We thought that he was a really flaky person because that's how the book described him at first. And everyone thought that he was going to steal from Janie because that was kind of his reputation.
And she had a lot of money left over from Jody because he basically ran his own town.
Yeah.
And that was how he got all of his money. And when he died, he left it with Janie. So people kind of thought Teacake was a young guy that was going to steal all her money from her.
Yeah. They moved to the Everglades, and there he got bitten by a rabid dog, and then he became hostile towards Janie as the illness progressed. He thought that the reason why he became hostile is because he thought that Janie was cheating on him with somebody else, and then he tried to shoot Janie one night after accusing her of having an affair. And then, but Janie shot him first, self-defense.
She kind of saw it coming, so she kept a gun near her, just in case.
And we're going to clarify that a little bit as you go, right?
Yeah. And then she left the Everglades and went back to Eatonville, the town that Jody made, to continue living her life.
So Janie Crawford, she was like, so she grew up in a white neighborhood, but she was mixed race. Her grandmother was a slave when that was still going on, and very shortly after her grandmother had Janie's mother, then the Civil War was over and all the slaves were freed. So
she had her baby, and then she ran away from home after she saw the opportunity, and she was hiding in like this cave thing, and then she heard news from somewhere. She heard news that the Civil War was over and the slavery was abolished. So she left and
started a new life in this white community.
So Janie's African American?
Yes.
She's mixed race, and the reason being her grandmother was raped by her slave owner, a white slave owner. So then Janie's mother was mixed race because of that. And then Janie's mother was then raped by her school teacher while she was going to school. And so Janie has some white heritage. She's, I don't know, she's probably equal parts black and white at this point. So if you can imagine that. And she has really long, beautiful black hair that's like a big part of the story. I'm not really sure why, but she's very beautiful, know that. So she is very beautiful, she's very imaginative, and she's still young. And she realizes that she wants to like experiment, fall in love, and find somebody, but then her grandmother marries her to this older guy, and she's just been smothered her whole life. After she met this older guy, and then she went on to Jody, she basically married the first person who showed any interest in her, didn't know him very well at all, and like ran away with him, and then found out later that he was just going to smother her the same way that her first husband did.
And for some clarification here, every character in this book is African American, except Janie, who's the mixed race.
Yeah.
But
in fact, Eatonville, the town that her second husband Jody started, is like the first all-black community in Florida. So she hasn't really had a chance to use her imagination, but as she goes through her life and her different husbands and like learns things throughout her life, she decides to stop caring what other people think, and she eventually finds herself around the time that she marries Teacake, and when their marriage is over and she moves back at the end of the story, she kind of finally finds herself.
Okay, so Logan Felix was the first.
Yes.
I was gonna say what happened to her mom. Like, why
She-
did she raise her?
She ran away. Like,
Yeah, but we don't know what happened to her, but she ran away.
after she was raped by her school teacher, she waited until she had Janie, and then she really kind of got into like drinking and running around with the wrong people, and she kind of just like her life kind of downward spiraled, and then she just ran away. So she basically left Janie's grandmother with Janie, and so her grandmother's not trying to be a bad person, even though she's like kind of held Janie back her whole life. She just wanted the best for her because she saw Janie's mom just like run away and ruin her life basically, so that's why she wanted to marry Janie to a nice person and basically held her back her whole life.
And Janie's grandmother never told Janie about her mother until she was kind of marrying her off to Logan. So yeah.
Alright, so Logan Felix was her first husband that she married, and that's the guy that her grandma made her marry right away. Logan Felix really cared about Janie, and at least he like showed that he did. And he was kind of just like very like loving to her, and he did a lot of things for her that some people would just be like, nah, you can do it yourself. But Logan was very like aiding to her. She didn't need help by anything, but he just always wanted to be that like gentleman to like do stuff for her. And after like he kind of started to catch on that Janie didn't really like love him back, so he kind of like started ignoring her and being kind of just distant from her and just pretending she really wasn't there anymore. And then Janie, after he started doing that, Janie kind of just like realizing like, you know, clearly he isn't the one I want to be with. So she went off and met Jody, and then she ran away with him and just left Logan to be with someone else.
There's a really cool metaphor for that kind of in the story where when they first got married, Logan had no problem going outside, getting water and firewood and bringing it in for Janie. And then after he kind of started realizing that she didn't love him, he was like, well, I'll chop up the wood, but like I won't take it in for you. And then eventually he was like, go do it yourself. Like, I don't care. You go chop your own wood. You do whatever you want. So kind of just like the progression of the way that he did things for her describes their marriage pretty well.
Yeah, like very quickly kind of just started to like die down.
At first he like read her poems and was super sweet to her, and then wouldn't chop the firewood anymore.
Okay, Jody Starks. He was Janie's second husband. She meets him as her marriage with Logan Felix is deteriorating, and to Janie he appears exotic because he's new and he's richer. He looks like he has a lot more money, and he even tells her the night that he meets her, he says, "Yeah, I have $300 to my name, and come live with me." And
I'll take you away from here.
yeah, and Jody is determined to make a place for himself in the world with Janie by his side, because I think he thinks that Janie is very beautiful and he can use that to his advantage, so he can get people interested in what he's interested in by using Janie as like an appearance factor. And Jody's ambitious nature soon begins to smother Janie, however, as Jody starts his own town called Eatonville. He makes himself the center of the town and uses Janie as eye candy on display. So he kind of makes her stand in the store that he makes and just stand there the whole day kind of advertising the store.
Do you know what that's called?
Trophy.
Trophy wife.
Yeah, yeah, I knew it. Okay. It is revealed that he is heavily sexist and racist, and he continues to hold Janie back right up until his last breath.
He just kind of, he never expressed any of the things that he was really feeling to Janie, and that was one of their main problems. He would lash out at her instead. Like, for example, we talked about her beautiful long hair. One day he saw somebody at the store, like, I don't know if they touched it or they were just looking at it, but they were really paying attention to her hair, and he got really angry and jealous and then made her cover it with like a head rag for the rest of the time and didn't let anybody else see it but him. And to her it was like, okay, like that's annoying, why are you making me do that? He never really explained that he was jealous. He never expressed any of his feelings. It just made her feel awful the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay, so Teacake is Janie's third husband. He's much younger than Janie. At this point, after Jody passed away, Janie's probably early 40s, but she's still very beautiful. She's just lived a lot more of her life now. And because he's a lot younger, people are quite cautious about him. They definitely think that she's gonna get all of her money stolen. But Teacake is her first true love. Like, she falls in love with him, she runs away with him, and he actually does one thing that neither of her husbands could get her to do before. All of them wanted her to work for them. Like, Logan Felix wanted her to chop the firewood or go work in the fields and stuff. Jody Starks wanted her to be the eye candy and all of that. And when it comes to Teacake, Janie is so in love that she's like, I'll go work in the fields with you just to spend more time with you. You know, she works without needing persuasion, and she just has fun living with him. He's fun, adventurous, and spontaneous, and he gambles a lot, he plays music for her. Sometimes, though, he disappears for days at a time, and that led us to believe he was using her, maybe gonna steal her money, but he's kind of the same type of person as Joe Starks as far as being ambitious and being a natural leader, but he's not nearly as egotistical, and he doesn't hold her back quite as much. So, after he got bit by a dog, he developed rabies and eventually dies from that, but...
Alright, so Phoebe. Phoebe is Janie's, like, best friend. Like, she's basically biggest part of her life. She sits on the porch, like, in the beginning of the story, it talks about how there's these gossips, and we're gonna talk about those next, I think. But she sits on the porch at the store and, like, of her own, and she just listens to, like, the gossipy stuff that people are saying about her, and then Phoebe goes and tells Janie. She's basically, like, kind of, like, her messenger. Like, if someone says something, she goes and tells her and kind of explains what's going on, like, why they see that like that. And when Janie, like, is talking about, like, what she wants in her life and, like, how she perceives herself and how other people see her, she always tells Phoebe about it, and Phoebe would sit there and listen to her. Yeah, so when she goes back where she moves to the Everglades and comes back, Phoebe, like, updates Janie on everything that has happened in the towns and, like, what the gossips are still doing and all stuff like that.
So the gossips are very significant, we thought, because it just shows that what everyone thinks, Janie's not really affected by it. She's just gonna keep moving her hips, you know, doing whatever. And there are old ladies that have nothing better to do. So they kind of start telling the story of Janie, though, because they all assume, they start gossiping about Teacake once Janie moves back to Eatonville. They start talking about how Teacake stole all her money and left her for a younger woman. And so her best friend Phoebe tells Janie that some people are talking behind her back, and then she tells Janie's whole life story from when she first left Eatonville to now, or her whole life story actually, to Phoebe. Yeah, and how she ended up back. Yeah.
So is it like at the beginning of the book, like they start telling the story, or is it like revealed at the end that she's telling the story to Phoebe?
It's at the beginning.
At the beginning of the story, Janie comes back and she kind of just goes into her house that she lived in before, and then Phoebe comes in to tell her what the gossips are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And Janie basically says, okay, well, here's the real story.
Okay.
And she tells Phoebe her whole life story. And at the beginning of the book, they just tell you that Teacake is gone. And you kind of think he ran away with her money, because that's what the book implies. But then at the end of the story, she comes to the end of her life story, and then she says, okay, go tell the gossips the truth.
Yep. Some vocabulary that we all thought were pretty funny were mean. It means dignified manner or conduct. And
Lacerate means to cut or tear irregularly, rip it up.
say
I don't want to say that one. You say it.
coquetry. It's an act of being flirty or suggestive. So at the beginning of the book, she was the book kind of tells how she was, you know, showing her breasts and her butt, and she didn't care because she was her own person.
She just
Blah, blah,
flaunted
blah.
herself.
This one's my favorite. Fractious. Means to be ornery or quarrelsome, to be like in an aggressive or aggravated mood, just annoyed in general.
Alright, the next word is peevish, and it means get easily irritated, and especially by like just small things. This is my favorite word, because when I first read it, I thought it said preemped. It's preempted, and it means to take action of something in order to prevent something from happening.
All right,
We
so
have
this.
less than 5 minutes left, so we're gonna have to go through these quickly, ladies.
Okay, this was my big idea. One question from the very first group meet that we had that I made, one question that stuck and we had a very long and extensive conversation was defend Janie's actions when she flaunts her figure, much to the displeasure of fellow characters. I thought that it sparked a conversation about why Janie should be confident in her figure. That led to how women are perceived to the world, especially back then. And she is a very attractive and curvy woman, and men will naturally be attracted to her, so she obviously wants to flaunt her figure after everything she's been through and after she knows what she wants now. She was a naive person, but she's not anymore. And she didn't know what she wanted.
Like really, really naive, guys.
Yeah, but now she's confident in her body, and she's aware of how she's showing herself to the world because of all she's been through. She wasn't really aware of that before, but now she is.
Okay, one thing that struck me very hard, Mrs. Turner is a character that Janie met in the Everglades, and she's also mulatto, but she's a little bit darker than Janie is, but she's still mixed race. And Mrs. Turner kind of has her own little religion, kind of. Nobody else really follows it, but she does. She worships white people to an extent, and even Janie to an extent, because she's slightly lighter than herself. And so she thinks that white people are gods, and if she worships them, not necessarily worships them like she's on her knees praying to them, but like if she treats them like they're above her, then she'll get into a better heaven than what regular people will get into. And what it really kind of, it spoke to me because I guess after like so long that black people have been beaten down by white people, that they actually come to believe that they're less than white people. And I think that's honestly tragic that she willingly worships white people and thinks that they're above her just because of her past, and black people in general, their past of being trodden on by white people. I think that's tragic that they believe that.
Alright, so my big idea, I'll make this short and sweet. Basically, the thing that caught my attention the most is how in the beginning of the story it said that Teacake was gone, and that really struck up like, well, Andrea might have thought that Teacake was like just going off and hanging out with other girls behind Jamie's back, and Taryn could have thought he was just back like going out his gambling and using all of the money from Janie, and I honestly thought he was dead, and I was right. Just from the previews and stuff. So that's basically like kind of the big idea, because it took us a whole like almost a whole class period to talk about what we actually thought the outcome of Teacake being gone was.
Good, and this is important, and they're all going to wait until you're finished anyway. They're going to ignore that bell. But you're pointing out the idea of authors' intentional use of ambiguity, authors intentionally being unclear. So did you enjoy that little component, or was it really annoying?
I enjoyed this itself.
I thought that Teacake ran away with her money, because that's what the gossip said, that's what the book implied, and that wasn't the case. So
But it
was
still
surprising.
kind of left you questioning, which was good because it left you on your feet
Good.
and stuff.
Good.
I mean, especially considering her naive nature throughout the entire book, you kind of assumed she found another bad guy and he ran away.
I was the one that found the critical responses, both positive and negative. And so they obviously thought that this was a fantastic novel. I took a big paragraph because at the end of the article, because they were explaining how the book was so beautiful to them, and they obviously thought that the conflicting emotions, happiness, sadness, love, fear, frustration, and a feeling of power were brought forth in the whole book. And they thought that it was ultimately the story of a woman who takes her fate into her own hands and finally finds true love with Teacake.
Okay.
Corbin Sitzman, please come to the office. Corbin Sitzman to the office.
Very quickly, ladies.
Yeah.
Recommended read for other people, yes or no?
Yes, I think it's a really good book to read. It can be hard, the dialogue, like in this one, that's pretty much what they're talking about. But the dialogue is like, like it's not.
That's how people talk very
Like
literally.
instead of saying that, they
phonetically.
said dat, like
Yep.
D-A-T, and it's kind of like, you have to
Yeah.
really read the words and stuff, and that's the only thing that I did not
You
like
almost
about
had to
it.
like say it out loud and read it to you in order to understand like the brilliant English that was being spoken.
Good. So great book. Problems with the language sometimes.
Yeah.
Give them a hand.
This is super wordy.